Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Ford F-250, we're going to be showing you how to install the Timbren rear suspension enhancement. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is going to be the right thing for your truck. So this is what they're going to look like, and more or less they're just going to replace our factory style jounce bumper. So they just bolt right in, and I mean, you could tell pretty easily the size difference. So these jounce bumpers from the factory, those are pretty much just going to stop your truck from bottoming out. All right, they're not going to provide any additional support. So you can tell that pretty easily, right? And with the Timbren, it's going to come down and sit a little bit off your strike pad here. And whenever there's weight in the truck, it's going to come down, contact that, and fill this void in between your axle and your frame. And that's what's going to provide that cushion, if you will. The Timbrens too, they also are, I believe they're called progressive. So the more weight you put in here, the more support they're going to provide. So it kind of helps even everything out. And one of the nice things with these, they're not really going to affect your driving whenever you're unloading and just kind of cruising around town without towing or anything like that. And that's because they're not really doing anything like this, right? Unloaded, they're just kind of there. And that's not the case with some of the other suspension enhancements. For example, like airbags. Even if you don't have anything in there and you have minimum air pressure in there, they affect the ride for sure. They make it a little stiffer. Which kind of brings me to my next point as well. So you're going to want the proper amount of clearance here when you're unloaded, okay? So I believe it's a half inch up into about 1.5 inches. And so, you know, it's not uncommon for people to put lift kits on these trucks, bigger tires and things like that. And so if yours is going to fall out of that range, then you might need a spacer. They actually sell spacers that you can put in here and, you know, kind of fill that gap. Not 100% sure if those spacers come with new longer bolts. I would assume they would, but something to think about. In our case, our truck has all factory suspension. It's not modified or anything, and that's about the thickness of my hand. So I feel like if you had like a 2-inch lift, you'd probably need a spacer, or obviously if you go up even higher, that would be the case as well. So when it comes to picking out a suspension enhancement for your truck, there's a ton of different choices available, and so I could see how that could get kind of confusing. You know, what one's going to work best for your setup? And they all pretty much accomplish the same thing, but there's some benefits and drawbacks to them as well. With an enhancement like the Timbren here, what's nice about these is once they're on, you're done. You don't have to mess with them, right? They're going to be ready for you. You know, you're not going to feel them whenever you're not using them, but when you're ready to use them and you got weight going on, that the support's going to be there. But with that said, you don't have the adjustability, right? You can't really fine tune these. So like with an airbag, those are going to require some maintenance, all right? Because you're going to have to, you know, you got air lines running and you got to put pressure in them and things like that, put air pressure in them. And, you know, but you're going to have maximum adjustability. So depending on what trailer you're pulling or whatever, you know, you're going to be able to adjust that and kind of find the sweet spot. So there's definitely some benefits and drawbacks, you know. Then there's other ones too that'll go in between your leaf springs, or you can add a leaf spring pack. Those are somewhat adjustable and relatively easy to use. So that's kind of the middle ground there as far as that goes. And I do want to address, it seems like a lot of people are using embed campers, so like the small campers that's sitting there. I'm looking for some extra support. With those, it seems like a lot of people are having the best luck with what's called the sumo spring. So it's pretty similar to this, but it's going to essentially make contact the whole time. And they're somewhat light duty. You know, these are pretty heavy duty. These are 8,600 pounds of load leveling support. So that's what they can handle. They're not going to increase your weight carrying capacity, but that's what they're rated for. And some of the sumo springs are, you know, I think a couple thousand pounds, something like that. There's a couple of different weight ratings that those have, but they're a little on the lighter side, and so they're more forgiving. They're not nearly as stiff. So using an in-bed camper or something like that, that might be a better solution for you, because you're adding weight but not a ton, and so you don't really need to go overkill, and then, you know, it's beating you up when you're going down the road, you know, because it's pretty stiff. So that would always be an option for you as well. But other than that, you know, at the end of the day, really quick and effective way to kind of upgrade your truck. As far as getting them installed, super easy. I mean, you probably don't even need to get your truck up in the air. You could probably just kind of do it on the ground underneath it. All you're going to have to do, there's 2 nuts you got to pull off, and then the factory jounce bumper comes down. Put this one in. I mean, you have to assemble this piece, but it's 1 bolt. Put those in, a couple shims, tighten everything back down. So really shouldn't run into any issues at all with this one, and shouldn't take you a whole lot of time either. So before we actually get our Timbrens on, what I like to do is just take a couple of measurements and run through a few different tests. That way we can kind of you know, get some before and after, and see if these Timbrens actually do make a difference, if they do improve all the way around. So with that said, we'll get a baseline measurement here first. So we have our factory suspension, no weight in the bed of the truck. And if you go from the ground to the bottom edge of our wheel well here, that's going to be right at 43.5 inches. And here at the front of the truck, from the ground to that wheel well edge, that's going to be right at 40.5 inches. So with those measurements taken, why don't we go ahead, get some weight in the bed of the truck and see what happens. So went ahead and put a big water tank in the bed of the truck. If I had to guess, it's probably about 180 gallons, something like that. So pretty good amount of weight, but honestly, for a truck like this, you know, it could definitely handle more, probably. But with that said, let's see what happened. I can tell our truck did squat down a little bit. And we'll take that same measurement from the ground to the edge of the wheel well. That's now at 41 inches. And here at the front of the truck, it looks like it lifted up a little bit, but we'll see exactly. From the ground to that edge, that's right at 41 inches. So what's happening is the truck's squatting down. You know, it's kind of sitting like this. And I'm sure many of you felt that before. It's not the most pleasant ride. So your ride quality is going to suffer. Just the overall performance, really. You know, your suspension doesn't have as much compression and rebound when you're going over bumps and things like that. Your braking and steering is going to be affected as well. And so I definitely feel like there's some room for improvement there. But measurements are one thing, and actually getting out on the road and driving it around and putting it through its paces is a whole nother story. So why don't we go ahead, hop inside of the truck, take it out on our test course, and see what it feels like. So here inside the truck, let's take it for a spin and see what happens. So we got our water in the back there, and first thing that we're going to do is go over some bumps. So hit them here, and what I like to do is kind of get going over a few of them first, really try to get some of that weight transfer and everything, you know, going through the truck's chassis and suspension. And kind of like I expected, really not too bad. These trucks are pretty stout right out of the factory. You can feel the weight though. You definitely can. It almost feels like, you know, that suspension is just a little sloppy, a little more sloppy than what I'd like it to be, but just a little bit. But then again, you know, we don't have that much weight back there. So if this is affecting it a little bit, I can imagine it'd be definitely amplified if you had a big trailer or a lot of weight back there. So through the bumps course, you know, I feel like there's some improvement here that might be had, but we'll find that out here in a minute. So now what we'll do is some evasive maneuvering, so kind of some S-turns and things like that. And this is where I'm really curious to see what happens. This is kind of more of a real world scenario, at least in my opinion. And in the past, this is where I felt the greatest improvement. So trying to get through a little clearing here and get some speed going and make these sharp turns, and immediately, right away, you can feel that weight kind of wanting to push you around a little bit. You know, it's not nearly as forgiving as with weight. And so I think there's definitely an improvement to be made here. And like I said, I know in the past, this is where I see the greatest improvement. And what's going to happen is those Timbrens are really going to help eliminate this body roll and just kind of keep our truck more planted and going where we want it to. But now that we ran through our test course, I'm going to pull this water tank out of the bed. We're going to pull into the garage and put these things on. And once we have them on, we'll come back out and kind of do the same thing. Run it through the course and take the measurements and see what happens. So to begin our installation, we're first going to need to assemble our Timbrens here. So you're going to have the bracket. That's going to have a threaded hole in it. And this bolt's going to go in there eventually. I do suggest sometimes some paint and surface rust could potentially build up in the threads and make it hard to thread it in there. So spray it out if you need to and just test the bolt out. Make sure it runs in there nice and smooth. If it don't, you can clean it out real good with a tube brush or penetrating oil, or if you have to, even use a tap just to clean out the threads. But with that said, this hole here inside of our Timbren, there's going to be a washer in there, and you want to make sure that washer lines up with the hole. So you can do one of those deals, put the bolt in from the bottom and line it up. We need to drop the head of this bolt, or this bolt, down through there. So what I found easiest is just take a magnet, if you got one, push it through like that. We're going to line that up with the threads on our bracket and hopefully be able to turn this a little bit. That way we can pull our magnet off. We'll take in an extension, an 11/16 size socket. Make sure it's started correctly, which it is, and then we'll just take our tool here and tighten the bolt down. Then you're just going to repeat that for the other Timbren. Now we can move underneath our truck. I did temporarily remove our spare tire just to give us some extra room to work. If you can work around it, great. If not, it might make it a little easier on you. But what you're going to do is come here to your jounce bumper, which is this piece here that sits right over your axle tube. And we're going to remove this. So this is held in place with 2 nuts. And I believe, yeah, they're 15 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and pull those off. You want to hold on to this hardware too, because we are going to be reusing it. Go ahead and get this factory one out of the way. And then you can take our new one and get this in position. Hopefully we're able to sneak this in here. So it'll line up. We're going to take the nuts that we just took off, get them started on each side. We're going to tighten these down, but not all the way. We want to leave a small gap in here because we are going to put a couple shims in there. Go about something like that. So here's that shim. What you're going to do is just slide it in between on the bottom of our frame and the top of our mounting bracket there. So pretty straightforward. It just fits right in there like that. Same deal on the other side. Once that's in there, then we can just tighten these all the way down. So once those are completely tight, we're simply just going to repeat the same process on the other side of our truck. So now that we kind of felt how they work and ran through our test course, so now that we have our Timbrens in place, put that same amount of weight back here, and we'll take that same measurement here at the back from the ground to that bottom edge. That looks like it's going to be right under 43 inches. And here at the front, take that same measurement, ground to the edge. It's about 40 3/4 of an inch. So definitely an improvement just sitting as far as the ride height goes. It's not squatting nearly as much in the back. Still a little bit, but not like what it was, which in turn translates to the front. So the front is just up in the air, just a little bit over our factory ride height. So definitely an improvement there, but I'm excited to hop in the truck, go out on the course and see if it improved. So up here in the truck, we're getting out of the rain and we'll go for our spin here. So let's see what happens. Even kind of just right there, just on acceleration, it felt a little better actually. But we'll go over our bumps and let's get that weight going through there. It is better, actually. Not, you know, crazy improvement, but it kind of feels, you know, it just feels like our suspension has more to it, if that makes sense. So like when we're going over this bump, you don't really feel that weight transferring through the whole truck like you did before. It's still there some, definitely a little bit stiffer, but feels better in my opinion. So although small, definitely an upgrade. And I keep telling myself too, you know, it's a big heavy duty truck, so not a ton of weight. So I'm just trying to imagine if we had quadruple the weight or 10 times the amount of weight, how that would affect. And I feel like if we had all that extra weight, you'd definitely be able to notice it a lot more. So again, we will go through our slalom here and do some hard turning and things like that. So I'm trying to get through a clearing. Everything's just pretty tight through here, so I gotta be careful, but I get these turns going, better, a lot better for sure. You don't feel that weight transfer nearly as much as you did before, and it's pretty surprising to me because you think with a truck like that, there wouldn't be a truck like this rather, there wouldn't be a ton of room for improvement like that. And time and time again when I do these, there's always an improvement, and the same holds true with this truck. So you know, just going around these corners, you feel more planted. You know, the steering wheel's more responsive, and it just, you know, the truck goes where you point it. So definitely an improvement as far as that test is concerned. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Timbren rear suspension enhancement on our 2019 Ford F-250.